start on the set. Welcome to the Bella Vista Gardening Program. I'm Jerry Horner, and today joining me is Barb Templin. She's a fellow member of the Bella Vista Garden Club. And this month we're going to be talking about early bloomers. Those plants that are starting to bloom before our normal winter is over. And also we'll be covering upcoming events and things to do in your garden for the month of February. So there's not too many upcoming events with this weather and whatever. But you know, you might find a warm day in February. Usually in February there's some warming that kind of fools the plants thinking it's spring, and then it gets cold again.
Well, and that's where my daffodils are already coming up.
Right.
You know.
And then what'll happen is they'll come up thinking it's spring, and then they get nipped. So,
right.
But anyway, there's some trails you can walk and see some of the wildflowers starting to bloom.
Right.
So, but we're going to talk about some early bloomers that are coming up already.
Some of the first ones that you see in the late winter, early spring, even popping up through the snow.
Oh yeah, well that's what we have on the first one, is it's called the snowdrops, and those are usually the first ones that come up. And it's not unusual to see that they're in the snow.
Right.
They get snowed on, and they just pop back up again.
And the good thing about those is that they're deer resistant, so you know, we don't have to worry about critters wiping them out.
And they're not very big; they're tiny, tiny ones.
Right. There's more than 20 species of this.
Well,
and
there's some doubles.
There's
a double.
And some of these bulbs can go for a lot of money.
Right. In 2012, a single bulb called Green Tear was sold for $569.
Yeah, Golden Fleece was sold on eBay for over almost $2,000.
Yeah, $1,900.
Yeah.
So on eBay. So
for a little bitty bulb.
They used to be used as currency, I think, too, back in the medieval days.
Well, that would make sense then.
Yeah. But snowdrops are one of your first ones. And then there's also this one. I don't have this one. It's a winter aconite.
Please don't have us say the Latin pronunciation.
No, there is a Latin name.
Because I don't think we can do that.
It hurts my tongue when I speak Latin. But they can spread, and they can form a nice blanket.
And they've got a real pretty cup-like bloom.
It's a tiny little bloom.
But are they easy to
do?
Because it says you got to soak the bulbs.
Sometimes you should soak the bulbs because they do get a little dry. And you may not have every bulb, take off, but once they are established, they can spread real well. The nice thing about these is they can go under a black walnut tree.
Yes,
and there's not too many things that can grow. So, and our next one we have is the Helleborus. I love this plant. I have it all over my garden. This I took the other day, this picture, and it starts blooming in January and February. And they hold their blooms until June.
Yeah.
It's the longest blooming plant.
And there's a lot of variety types of this one, too.
The older ones, the bloom kind of hangs down, and the newer varieties coming up, excuse me, their blooms are more upward, so you can see the bloom.
I think the reason for these early bloomers is kind of a twofold thing, in that at this time of the year, like you said, plants are being, fooled because they think it's spring, but it's not. But also, pollinators are starting to come out now, and so these early bloomers
they're very important.
Right, they have a very little food available to them.
Right.
So, you know, the bees and butterfly, whatever, is going to
Okay.
benefit from, because they come out early also.
Right.
And once again, deer don't like them.
No, they don't. They don't eat them. And here I have the Helleborus there by the tree, and then in front of that is the Italian arum. Now they don't bloom yet, but they start putting out their new leaves, and it's a beautiful leaf that comes out about the same time as the Helleborus. Now there's a lot of variety of color.
Right.
They're developing more and more. I have some lavender and I have some purple, but the white ones bloom first, and then the lavenders for some reason.
I only have one kind, and right now it's laying down.
Yeah. And there is another variety. This is called the bear claw, or some people call it the stinking Helleborus, and I don't know why. I don't think it smells bad, but
Do they have a smell?
I haven't really noticed any. It just has a different leaf shape. It's a little finer leaf, and then the blooms are just a green bloom at the top of the plant. So it's just a little different variety. I have both varieties. and
Well,
they're-
the upside down blooms, it's really hard to appreciate
Yeah.
that bloom because you can't really see
yeah,
them.
you have to be laying on the ground.
Well,
to
yeah,
see
and
them.
I don't do
No,
well with
no,
that.
I
So
don't know. But it's great because the deer don't like them, and they're very easy maintenance. You don't have to do hardly anything to them. Just cut the old leaves off every year, and that's the bloom of the
Oh,
bear
that's-
claw.
yes, that's
It's
pretty.
pretty. And then crocus. So everybody has crocus, I would imagine. They can bloom early spring, and for several months.
and they have such a variety of
Oh
colors.
yes, they do.
And they smell. They have a really strong
Yeah.
smell.
They're
and
very
they're
sweet.
again, once again, you know, attracting those pollinators.
Pollinated. Now, some people put them in dormant lawns, and then by the time they fade out, it's time to cut the grass.
Right,
But, you know,
right.
I think our Mayor Christie in Canada, they used to have them growing in their lawns, and then they would disappear after they
About
cut
the time
first
that you were
bucket.
ready to mow your grass, the
They're gone.
right.
Okay. And the witch hazels. Now that is a large variety of witch hazels, and the Missouri Botanical Gardens stated that the plants in our large witch hazel collection do not all bloom at the same time, nor do they always bloom at the same time every year. So you just don't know when they're going to bloom, and
And they can grow pretty tall,
they
can't
can. The native, it can grow up to 15 to 20 foot, and
So
can-
this is
and it
like
could go to 30.
a bush or a tree that
Yeah.
it could be.
right. And then some begin to bloom in the late fall, you know, almost in winter, and there's a very fragrant variety. This is the native. This is the native bloom on the native witch hazel. And then there's a variety called Diane, which is a beautiful orange.
Yes, that
It's
is.
really
And what
pretty.
an unusual flower.
It is. It's so delicate.
Right.
And
And then how
the-
long does the bloom last?
They
on-
last for a while. I mean, they'll be out
Is
there.
it like a forsythia where it lasts for
a couple weeks.
couple weeks? Okay.
And then this is called Jelena. And it's another beautiful red-orange. It's really
Boy, would
pretty.
that add a lot of
Yeah,
color to your garden.
That does count. And then it really attracts those bees.
Right. Right.
Now the other one we have, that blooms early, is a Mahonia.
Now, I'd never
aquifolium.
heard of those before.
Well, they're called Mahonia, or they're called Oregon grape. And they begin to bloom in February. They have cascading yellow flowers that just cascade down, and they open yellow.
And then the best part is that those blooms turn into berries.
Yes, they do.
And the birds love them.
Oh, we have some birds that come up and they'll sit in a tree, then they'll come and get a a berry and go back in the tree. They're just fun to watch. It's amazing. But the leaves are very prickly, like a holly, because they're sticky leaves. But there's another variety that is, and that's the berries. You can see how
Oh,
the
yeah.
berries are beautiful blueberries in the summer. And there's another variety that is, it's called the soft caress, and that only grows 3 to 4 foot tall. It's
So it's kind of a
finer leaf.
miniature one.
And it's a softer leaf. It doesn't stick you like the other ones.
Does it
And
still
that's
have
the
the
bloom.
same flower?
Yes,
Okay.
yellow blooms are a little different. They're more upright, but it's a new variety that's not quite as large as the Mahonia. Now the big Mahonia, that can get to 12, 15 feet, but you
Wow.
would need to trim it. If you want to trim it, you have to cut it. It's a cane growing plant, so you'd cut it at the base. If you want
Oh,
to take out a
okay.
long,
So it grows,
tall.
it blooms on new growth. Okay.
yeah. So it puts out new canes.
Okay.
So then the next one we have is the white forsythia.
Now this was something I didn't realize that
a lot of
was
people,
available.
A lot of people
To
don't
me,
know about it.
forsythia, and you think yellow.
Yes, absolutely. This is in the forsythia family, but it's not a true forsythia. So it's a different variety. And sometimes mine blooms in January. Right now it just has buds. And sometimes it blooms in February. And sometimes it blooms in early March. So you never know when
Right.
it's going to bloom. It just
Right.
depends
It just
on the
depends
weather.
on the weather.
And
And
it's a-
so much of these depend on the weather.
Right. And you can plant that in sun to part shade. So it's a great little bush. And I keep it trimmed, to keep it from going over the deck. So it's
Right.
easy to maintain, and
Right.
I don't have any problems with any deer eating it. So it's a nice
Isn't that
little
nice?
bush. Yes, it is nice. Okay, then daffodils.
Oh, my
Everybody has daffodils.
Yep.
And I'm hoping they have the Bella Vista daffodil.
Right. And
But
here
they're-
again, such a variety.
Oh, yeah. It's
I mean, from little to big, and the Bella Vista daffodil has a very big bloom on it
Oh, yeah.
compared to
Right.
a lot of the other daffodils.
Yeah. Now there's, this is one of the earlier ones. This comes up real early, and this can be early sensation. So it gets about 18 inches tall. Then some of the others I have is the tete-a-tete, and this one only gets about 6 inches tall. It's a tiny little thing.
Yes.
It's so cute. And then there's also a white. I don't have this one. It's a white tete-a-tete that is tiny too. They're just fun to just
And
put
like
in
I
little pockets.
Right. And there again, they do come in a variety of colors.
Right.
The bloom is the same, just not the color of
Right.
it. But there are double.
There's doubles, and there's so many varieties. And this is the best source, I think, Brett and Becky's. The Garden Club has a great,
program with them that
yeah, their program, Blooming Bucks. If you order from Brett and Becky's and you put the Blooming Bucks, put us down, the Bella Vista
Right.
Garden Club for Blooming Bucks, we get a percentage of the sale. So there's so many varieties in here that's just, it's unbelievable.
well,
So-
and the seed catalogs, they started coming out, December
Oh, yeah.
and then January,
and
because
you wanna
you want
order
to be
early.
able to see what you want to plant in the fall. But by the time that you get to ordering them,
Yeah, they're gone.
they might be gone.
It's best to
So
get your orders in
the
early.
early bird gets the bulb in
Right.
this.
Right, and they won't send your bulbs until they're ready to be
Right.
planted.
Right.
They have your order, but they're not going to send. And some of them don't even charge you till they send the bulbs.
Right.
So,
And
but
it
you gotta
all
get
depends
ordered.
on the area that you live, the zone that you live,
Right, right.
whenever they feel that it's safe.
Yeah, but there's another early daffodil too. That's a sweet little thing. It's called white petticoat, and so there's different shapes to the blooms also on some of the daffodils.
Yeah, and there are so
narcissus.
many other types of early flowers, like the redbud. I mean,
Well, that blooms a little later.
Right.
Yeah.
But
the
there
first
again-
tree, the first tree to bloom is usually your serviceberry,
Right.
and that's white. And some people get it confused with the
Red?
dogwood, thinking it's
Oh,
a
the dogwood, yeah.
But they bloom before the dogwood. So,
But it's, yeah, it's a, the other one that I thought was kind of interesting was a winter heath. And I don't, unfortunately don't have a photograph of that.
right. I
But-
don't have that plant either, and I know it blooms early.
Right, and it's a
just,
stalk-like bloom with lots of
Tiny little flowers.
Yeah, it almost looks like a bleeding heart flower or bloom. But they come out very early also.
right.
Also.
Yeah.
And it's a nice variety of color, but I'm not sure how long the bloom itself
Yeah.
lasts. I think it's fairly short with these.
Yeah.
And the same thing with, like a bleeding heart. They're later bloomers,
Right.
Not early spring or late winter. So
You just have to watch in your catalogs if it says early, mid,
Right.
or late blooming.
Right.
So that's kind of the season they bloom in. But
Right.
you know, with daffodils, you can extend your bloom time for months. Some bloom up very early, like these, and some bloom mid-season, and some bloom late. So
When does the ones that I'm familiar with, like the creeping phlox, when does that start to
that's
bloom?
more in May.
Is that in May?
April, May.
Okay.
And it depends too on the location. I have a neighbor that has it, that hers blooms like 2 weeks before mine do. And it's just the location, I guess the sun, the soil, the wind temperature, you know, she's a little lower than I am. So,
Right.
you know, you have your little pockets that bloom before other pockets do.
And all of that is dependent on sun
Mother
and
Nature.
Right.
Mother Nature,
Right.
she controls it all. Yes.
Well, and like later in the week, maybe into next week, the temperatures here are supposed to get very, very cold. And I'm talking teens.
Oh, yeah.
And so you've got these little shoots that are coming up. Is there a way that would they benefit from being covered at this time?
Well,
or
if you have a bloom, I think, on something, you know, you might want to
cover
put
it
a
up?
pot over it.
Okay.
But they're, you know, they're so used to that. That
We kind of had that a little bit last year where it was warm then cold and warm then cold. But what I found, and it could be just my imagination, is that it actually stunted the growth a bit.
I think it does.
My Bella Vista daffodils didn't, you know, get up quite as high
yeah.
as they have been in previous years. But
It does slow them down. It really does.
yes, yes.
Yeah. And I've had and the tulips too. They bloom, you know, in a variety of weeks, depending on the weather. And
Why here in our area of northwest Arkansas, we don't see a lot of tulips.
Well, you almost have to treat them like an annual here. The squirrels love them; they dig them up, and then they just. I don't think they get the coldness that they need like they do up north.
Oh, okay.
And
so
so
it's
sometimes we have that mild winter, and they don't get cold enough.
Right.
You know, they do need some chill in their bulb. So,
trigger a
to
bloom.
trigger the bloom, yeah.
Okay.
And like I said, that they're so tasty to the squirrels. They dig them up unless you
Yes.
put some metal grating or something over the planting. So
Well, I had read an article where some person said put aluminum foil down, you know, and I'm thinking about that, and I'm going, I don't think that would be a very good idea.
well, I don't know, because I had a tulip bulb planted and I didn't realize it was there, and I put a stepping stone over it. Well, in the spring, on the edge of the stepping stone came up this little green stem.
Really?
And that bulb was right under the stepping stone, but it found its way up and it bloomed.
Oh, well, they can be determined.
So maybe we should just put all of our tulips under stepping stones.
Yeah, there you go.
And then they'll come up
And then
around
they'll come
it.
up.
So, and the squirrels can't dig them up.
Right.
So maybe that's some protection we can try, but it was a funny situation. So.
Yeah.
But there's so many things that are starting to bloom, and we're getting ready to, for spring. And, I'm sure we're going to have some more bad weather like we show in our background here, but we might have more snow. So,
Well, let's hope not.
yeah, yeah.
We should outlaw that here.
Yes. Well, before we moved here, everybody said, oh, if we have snow, it'll be gone the next day or 2 days later. Well, sometimes it stays for a while now, so
that's right.
It depends.
That's right.
But the things you have to do in your garden now for February, there's a few things.
Yeah, the house plants for one thing. Now, what I do with mine is they're in during the winter. Otherwise, they're out on the screen porch or out on my patio. But what you have to look for right now are spider mites and scale, and that's fairly easy to eradicate if you use an insecticidal soap or something like that.
And you can make that yourself with Murphy's oil soap.
Oh,
because
well,
it
that's
has the
good to know.
oil and the soap, and it's like a tablespoon per gallon. That's good for the spider mites.
But most houseplants die because of overwatering, not underwatering.
Right.
So you really have to know your plant to know, okay, do they like it to be damp, or do they have to totally dry out before you should water them again? Yeah. So, it's not hard.
No, just got to feel the soil and see how they react. So the winter annuals, you want to deadhead your pansies and your violas, and if you have a mild day, you might want to put a little fertilizer on them. And they, again, for the winter, they kind of shrink up a little bit when it's cold, but then they bounce back
But
when
it
it
is
warms
amazing to see, after a snowstorm or a cold snap, they're still out there trying to,
They're showing off.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
In fact, we were by Pinnacle area, and crews were planting all new pansies. So that's nice to see.
They stay blooming for several months.
Right, right.
Until it gets too hot, and then they kind of give up when it gets hot.
Right. They're not into warm weather. But this is a good time to be thinking about your lawn too. And if your lawn needs it, it would be a great idea if you lay down some lime.
If you need it.
If you need it, right. If you're not sure, you can take a soil sample into the extension office in Bentonville.
Right.
However, there's a 3-week return on that.
Right now they're pretty busy.
Right.
Because I think the agricultural tests are being done.
I would imagine that this time of the year would be very busy for them.
Right. Well, the one suggestion they have is to do your soil test every year at the same time. So instead of doing one in the fall, then a couple years later do it in the spring, do your soil test about the same time every year.
And then do they tell you what you need to do to amend the
They
soil?
tell you exactly what you need to put on it and how much, so to get it to the optimum level.
Isn't that a great benefit to have?
Well, it's free.
Right.
And the reason it's free is because there's a tax on fertilizers in this state, and portion of that tax goes towards the soil sample fees, samples.
Well, that's interesting to know too.
I mean, you pay for it in
one way,
but everybody pays for it.
Right.
So
right.
everybody can get a free soil test.
Right. And that is so beneficial. Even I would think in your flower garden.
Oh yeah.
Just to know if you've got a healthy soil or not.
Because one time I did send in soil samples, one from my azalea bed and one from my rose garden. And they asked me, did I get these mixed up? Because I had bad results with both the tests.
Really?
The rose garden was too acid and the azalea bed was too alkaline. So I had to do some adjusting there. I don't know how it got out of balance, but it did, and it affected my roses.
Absolutely.
And my azaleas.
Absolutely.
I could tell they weren't doing well.
That's
why I
right.
did the soil test. So.
Well, speaking of roses.
Right. Well, you can apply a dormant spray right now if you have your roses coming up. And it's really too early to do that pruning of your roses.
And why would that be?
Well, because if you prune them now, and then it starts some new growth, and then they get that late freeze, it really damages the
Right.
the rose.
Yeah, that's
plant.
true. That's true.
So you want to
then
wait till late February, early March to do your heavy pruning, and your climbers. You don't want to trim your climbers until after they do their first bloom.
Oh,
So
okay.
you don't cut those back, way back. You let them come and bloom on their trellis or whatever, and then do your trimming back if you need to control the size. So,
All right. So with your trees and shrubs that you hope are going to be coming back this spring, you really have to keep monitoring the moisture in the soil,
Yeah.
because it will be so detrimental if we have a very dry winter and we
Right.
can't, they need that moisture
Well, their
in
roots
order
still
to
need
start that
moisture. Yeah.
spurt.
Yeah.
So, and as long as the ground isn't frozen, you can plant trees and shrubs
Oh, yeah.
now
You can.
with success.
Basically, you can plant a tree year round almost.
Right.
So, and you want to prune your crepe myrtles.
Yeah.
and
And there's a
there's-
way to trim,
Well, you want to
them.
stay away from crepe myrtle.
right,
And
where
there is,
you just hack them all off.
Right, there's a link on our website, bellavistagardenclub.com, and it has a video on our gardening information. You can click on that video and see how to properly prune a crepe myrtle. So that's one thing.
Very
you need to-
helpful.
it's
Very helpful.
And the perennials, most perennials can be divided now. You can, as they're coming out of the ground, it might be a little early because we've had some cold weather, but some things, as soon as they break the ground and they're too large, you can, dig them up and divide them.
It would still be too early to clean out a bed. You want, right?
Yeah.
You want to be able to have some of that.
I got some leaves still in the
Right,
beds and
right.
for some protection.
Because there'll still be some
Well,
cold weather. It's just the beginning
February.
of February.
It's February, yeah.
So
You have to go by the weather. you know,
yes,
and,
as in anything.
So,
The ornamental grasses, the
Mm-hmm.
big grasses, now would be the time to be trimming them back
right, before they start.
before they
their
start
growth, yeah.
to grow.
And
right.
liriope.
Right, and the
Yeah.
liriope.
So all your
But
grasses need.
we were talking about how to do the tall grasses
Mm-hmm.
the best way, because some of those, branches get carried away and
Mm-hmm.
they're all over the place. But if you try and tie the grass together
Mm-hmm.
and then cut it off, say with a
Well, you could
hedge
use, yeah,
trimmer.
or you could use a chainsaw if they're
Oh,
real big.
I suppose that's true,
You could
yeah.
if it's real big.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So,
But
you
it can
wanna-
be a mess.
But if you wait too long, then that new growth comes up, and then you're cutting the top of the new growth off, and it's
Right.
going to look like that all year. So
Right, right.
You have to trim it at the right time. So
That's
just
right.
watch your new growth and see
Right.
where it is. And don't forget to feed the birds. The birds
Oh,
are so
yes.
hungry. We're going through so many pounds of bird seed.
Well, what
lately.
I did this fall and winter is for my black-eyed Susans and some of my other plants, I leave the seed heads on there. But what I do is I bend them down to the ground, because by that time they're brittle and I want the birds to be able
Get
to
those seeds.
utilize those, so I'll clean that up in the spring, but at least that's something that I've provided
Yeah.
that they can feed
They're
on.
going, and the suet, they're going through a lot of suet too.
I
the
would imagine,
bluebirds.
yeah.
Seen a lot of bluebirds. So don't
And
forget.
that's the other thing. We have so many bluebirds
Mm-hmm.
now, and it's important to have those and have appropriate plants around them,
Yeah.
so both can thrive.
Yeah. Well, it's a good time to grab a cup of hot chocolate
Yep.
and just look at your catalogs and try to plan things for your garden. And if you need more information, you can go to bellavistagardenclub.com.
Does
And
the
then-
Master Gardeners have a site that you can?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
They have a site. I think we had it on the screen. I think she'll put it on the bottom.
Okay.
And the next Bella Vista Garden Club meeting will be February 24th, and we're doing Zoom meetings. be at 9:30. And our program is going to be creating a water feature.
Now that should be very
That-
interesting.
And it's presented by Cody Gilstrap, and he owns the River Rock Water Gardens. And so it's going to be interesting.
That
I
would-
don't have a water feature. I have a place for one, and I've reserved it for the past 27 years, but I don't have a water feature. So,
You are a patient person,
well,
let me tell
I
you.
keep trying to talk my husband into, that would be a good place to put a water feature. And so,
We just have a couple of fountains that we
yeah,
use.
I have bird baths. But,
Right.
Yeah.
And the amount of birds that utilize those is
It's
just amazing.
Yes, we've also had a hawk that took a bath in our bird bath one time.
Wow.
Which is really unusual. So.
But as a gardener, it's important for you to consider all things. Birds, pollinators.
Right.
You know, not just making your yard beautiful, but
It's a
trying to
habitat.
enhance the
Yeah,
everything.
there's a habitat for everybody, all
Right.
the people out there, all the
Right.
critters out there.
You betcha.
And Tony's also going to be doing a one-on-one question-answer session at the meeting on the 24th. So, but you can
And
just
he
get
knows it all.
Well, when it comes to organic gardening, he is our expert.
Right.
He's done
Right.
well. But I thank you for coming today and
Well,
joining me.
thank you for inviting
We just
me.
love to talk gardening. And
Yes,
plants and
especially this time of
flowers.
the year.
Yeah, we need some break from all this lockdown we've had, and I'm glad to see the plants are coming
Right.
back and flowering, and we're going to have a beautiful spring.
You betcha.
And if you've enjoyed the show, I hope you join us next month. And until then, don't forget to stop and smell the roses.